Hi everyone, thanks for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Sing and I'm with the Connect Singapore team. So today we're presenting the webinar on COVID-19 and EduTech for schools, the China response, which is presented by Ms. Claudia Wang, who is the partner and the Asia Education Practice Lead with Oliver Wyman in China. So this webinar is hosted as part of our 6th annual International and Bilingual Schools China Conference, which is happening from 9 to 11 of November 2020 in Guangzhou, China. So you can find out more by clicking the link that my colleague was sent over the chat. The session will be ongoing for about an hour, with Claudia presenting for about 30 minutes, followed by about 15 to 20 minutes Q&A. So before I hand over the time to Claudia, because there are a number of admin matters for me to point your attention to. Okay, so as you kindly ask your questions by clicking the Q&A button that you can find at the bottom panel of the screen. So because of the limited time that we have for Q&A, feel free to upvote the questions, comment on the questions, and of course we will address them the first instance once we get to the Q&A. And of course, during the Q&A session, we also allow attendees to sort of speak up and comment. So please raise your hand if you'd like to sort of make a comment, and I'll mute you for that session. And lastly, and most importantly, the webinar session, the webinar recording will be sent to your email within 2 to 3 working days after this webinar. So without further ado, let me sort of hand over the time to Claudia. Claudia, please.
Yep, thanks, Steve. Yep. So, hello everyone. Thanks for joining today's discussion. So, like Sting has mentioned, so we're going to talk about like COVID-19 and EduTech for schools, the China responses. So before that, by way of introduction, so I'm Claudia Wang, who leads Oliver Wyman's education efforts in Asia. I've spent past decades working very, very closely with local governments, with private equities and education operators on policy drafting, opportunity identification, commercial due diligence, and various types of like strategies. So in the next 30 minutes, we are going to focus on 4 major topics. So the first one is about the China premium school market overview, and then what is the status quo of digitalization in premium schools today in China? And then under the pandemic, what are the EduTech opportunities that we have observed? What's their impact on K-12 schools and like training business and everything education space? And also, I know a lot of the attendees today are actually representatives from schools. So how to manage expectations of online classes, what are the tips there are something we're going to share today. So first of all, let's take a look at China's premium school market. So in China, in 2019, the total grade 1 to 12 school enrollments has reached almost 180 million. So the private segment right now represents around 11% of the total market. And this segment has outperformed market average growth of 2%. So let's remember the 7% and let's take a look at like what premium schools are growing in the following slides afterwards. So premium school in China came into being actually when it's like 20, 30 years ago. Its role is mainly to fill in the gaps in seat supply in certain regions of China. But after so many years, it's not only serving that purpose alone, it also is positioned as a supplement to public offering. And premium schools are schools with annual tuition fees higher than 100,000 RMB in tier 1 cities like Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, and Shenzhen. And those schools with annual tuition fee over 60,000 RMB in the rest of like China. So they are starting to emerge to meet the evolving demand from parents. Some of them may be unsatisfied with the English proficiency in the public PRC track of schools. Some of them are eager to provide holistic education or send their kids to schools with like better facilities. So they came into being now as an option to cater to informed and more affluent parents in China. So the demand for such premium schools is driven by a lot of factors. We all know that urbanization in China has been like has a very, very positive impact on the growing affluence of the families. And a lot of the younger generations of parents are now upgrading their education concept. They're willing to embrace holistic education and different concepts. And they're unsatisfied with the English proficiency in the school and still want to send their kids abroad in the long run. So all this put together are the fundamental reasons why parents are sending kids to premium schools. And if you deep dive into the premium schooling options in China, there are four types of options. So if we're looking at schools where Chinese nationals can actually attend, then parents can choose like public bilingual schools, they can choose private bilingual schools, or some of the high school students' parents may send their kids to full-time study abroad training centers. And if you're an expat in China, then international schools are usually the most common options for those kids. And when you're looking at different schooling options, you can see very different features, not only in the target students demographics and student types, but also if you look at the degree granted by different schooling options, if you look at the price point, if you look at like the hours of the English teaching hours in the class, and if you look at how much governments are actually supervising or regulating the segments, there are huge difference. So usually speaking, full-time study training centers are not included in our full-on discussion, as they're actually playing in a gray area. And while the rest of the schooling options are highly regulated by governments, especially for the bilingual school type. And also the premium segment schools usually falls under the private bilingual segments and also the international school segments, while the public bilingual schools are regulated by governments on the fees, so they're relatively cheaper. Their teaching language is also like a mix of like an even mix of Mandarin and English, while for other types of schools, it's more immersive environments of English teaching. So how is the premium school performing so far? So we have seen like the overall enrollment in China is around like 180 million. The private enrollment in 2019 is around 20 million. But premium school enrollment in China is only like around 1.5 to 2% of the total premium, the total private enrollment. So it's like still very, very small. But that private bilingual school segment actually witnessed the fastest growth during the past few years. So remember, private segment in the past 5 years are growing at like 7%, while the whole premium segment is growing at 15 to 20%. And if we deep dive into the private bilingual school segment, it is growing at almost 25%, which is amazing. And if we look forward, a lot of people might ask like, what's COVID-19's impact on this premium schools in China? I would look at it from like two perspectives. A is trying to look at it from a short-term perspective. So during past 3 months, all the schools are closed down, are shut down in China. And a lot of parents are complaining. Some of the premium schools are telling parents that they're actually lowering the tuition fee or providing certain discounts, while some of the schools reported that they have like student loss because parents like are very, very unsatisfied because of this COVID-19 situation, blah, blah, blah. But if we look at from a long run perspective, I still think as long as the fundamentals, the demand is still there, it's still a great market to enter. And if we look at different products, international school market probably gonna remain flat because I think it's not only like in the past few months, it's been like in the past few years, the FDI inward investment has been decreasing in China. And then there are less expats coming to China and they don't have like, there are not that many children that needs this kind of like education. So that's the space. And then for private bilingual school, it's definitely gonna continue the momentum, not only in tier 1 cities, but also in lower tier cities. Because per our observation in the market, so there are abundant seat supply in Beijing and Shanghai market. While if you look at lower tier cities, from number 3 to the number 3,000, there aren't many supplies there. So there are huge opportunities in both mid-price and premium school segments if you have the right product. As we have seen like more and more stringent regulation control from the governments on this space. For example, a few years back, public bilingual schools is like highly regulated by policy. Government is not like approving any new school licenses there. And then for private segments, in the past 24 months, the government is exerting very strict control over like textbooks, over like your enrollments, over your fee cap, over your capitalization, especially for grade 1 to 9 stage, where this is like the mandatory education stage where government is like more and more cautious, while in high school there are like more flexibility there. So if you're a school operator who is thinking about like coming to China, or if you're an education operator in other space, but they still consider opportunities in the premium K-12 school segments, there's other information that I think would be useful. So we think this market holds like the long-term aspirations in China. It's just like we need the right product, we need the right people, and then tailored to local students in order to win the demand from the market. Because if you're considering tier 1 cities, it's already like very competitive. If you're considering lower tier cities, their parents' demand may be like very different from like parents in Beijing and Shanghai. So that's an overview of the premium school market in China right now. So if we move on to the second part, what is the status quo of digitalization in premium schools in China? Here's the result. So it is like there's a huge trend behind everything. So per our understanding, governments across Asia are increasing their expenditure on digital transformation in education system. Some of them may prioritize higher education first, but a lot of them has come into a stage where even for K-12 schools, they're improving like they're upgrading their infrastructure, they're digitized like textbooks, and adopting AI technology across the nation. So though it's not going to be solved in the short run, but it's going to be the long-term theme, at least for the next like 10 to 15 years. And how are they like impacting the schools? So the digitalization in schools has its effects on 5 main business parts. So it's either like providing or equipping schools with the digital environment, or it's providing digital academy to students and teachers and parents. And then the whole OA system, there are solutions to help you to get like more and more intelligent. And then smart services are everywhere. So it's not only like in the scenario of a classroom, but it's also for like even on the mobile phones, there were like apps and things to help to provide a better learning experience in the schools. And then a lot of schools are leveraging facial recognition and different advanced technology to ensure not only IT, but also like security systems are there. So a lot of the business parts are impacted. There are different technology applications there on the right-hand side. And the suppliers in the space actually mainly falls into 3 categories. So there are hardware providers, and then for like students, and then for classroom settings, and also like for school infrastructures. And then there are like software providers. So people are mostly familiar with the learning management system in the schools, and a lot of like AO system there. There are a few others as well. And then there's some content providers. They're not only providing content for like the teaching content itself, it fall into like different categories, be it like psychological things, or be it like other STEM education supplement content, or it's just like English and maths, other major subjects. So there are a lot of content providers in the category as well. And so in the schools, for our discussion was a lot of the school principles. So the basic students data and profiling system and OA system are the most common adoption in the school. it's kind of like a very, very rigid demand. So for example, the regulators would want each school to be connected to their centralized education bureau system so that they have access to all those informations. And also for school functions, for different departments, there is a very quite standardized like management flow where OA systems can actually help to improve the efficiency and things. And then different schools actually reported very different kind of like adoption on those digitalization tools or like things to help students and parents and teachers. So it's highly depending on the management team's mindset and the vision of the school, and also depending on the school scale, and also the balance between the efficiency gain and cost savings. So I still remember when I talked to one of the IT head of one of the premium schools. So they are relatively a new school, and the management thinks like a digital K-12 school campus is very important. So they spent millions of dollars on IT setup when they opened the school. And then he's providing me some of the case studies of his peer schools, where for a lot of like old teachers who has been, at least with 10 or 20 years tenure in their job and role responsibilities, it's very clear that they should like manually work on some of the like reporting flow. They should manually, grading the students' work. So they kind of like consider it as part of their daily role. And if schools are not willing to invest in this kind of tools, if it's like too expensive, some of the teachers just are not motivated and are used to old ways to do it. And schools will just like use this as a reason to not like adopt those kind of like new tools. So it's totally different in each school. But fundamentally, we do think like for the tools that can help increase management efficiency, and also in the long run help to increase the teaching efficacy, and can solve the pain points of the schools. They will still have a future in the market adoption. And then this digitalization market in premium schools is also like highly fragmented. So there are different reasons. So first of all, if you look at the school business, it involves like the school management, the teacher management, the student lifecycle management. There's just like no one-stop solution, and a lot of customization demand out there behind each school. So it's very difficult to integrate all functions horizontally and trying to provide a one-stop solution. So every school just like reach out to different vendors to meet their different demands. And then there's vary by region a lot. It's actually depending on their relationship with like each school campus and also like different government department in order to penetrate into it. So higher concentration has been observed in more standardized like modules or segments such as OA system. While for the others, a lot of the providers are still thinking or trying to explore their own profit model, because in the follow slides I'm going to share, like a lot of things right now in China are actually for free. So players haven't actually think about like a way how to make money. But some of the interesting things that we have heard from the schools is a lot of the key stakeholders reported that in the future there will be more potential to adopt some AI or cloud-backed solutions in the future, for the sake of like improving management efficiency and also increasing like students' learning experience. So in some of the schools in China, you can see like facial recognition technologies are applied in campus security adoption, AI teaching, AI grading. A lot of them are like free apps right now, available to like schools, to teachers, to parents and students. And it's totally for free. And the penetration right now is like super high already. And then voice recognition are utilized in oral assessment, like English testing, in a lot of like standardized tests. And then there are robotics used in extracurricular activities. And also for the big data part, it's helping like the sync and helping the education bureau and also helping the schools like backing up a lot of things and increase their management efficiency. So this is something that is like gaining momentum in China right now. So what's COVID-19's impact on schools' adoption of digitalization? And what are the emerging EdTech opportunities that we have seen in the market? So this is just a quick recap. So the pandemic definitely exerted a very, I would say, like negative impact on the education system. So by mid-May, 70% of the world's student population in almost 170 countries are affected. So in China, the good news is from this month, all the schools, after like 2.5 months shut down, all the schools are reopening progressively right now. And generally starting with the final grade of like middle school and high school. And I'm in Shanghai right now. So all the kids between grade 1 to 12 are back to school now. Though the semester is relatively short for them, it's just like 1 month. Most of them are going back to the summer break in the next like 35 or like 40 days. But people are getting back. And in rest of the Asia, most of the countries, their schools are still remained closed so far. And a lot of the schools or like parents that we have been talking to, teachers that we have been talking to, reported some very, very common pinpoints. So their difficulty in transforming from offline course delivery to online delivery model. So teachers are not well trained. So they're still using the very, very traditional way to deliver the class, while the efficacy remains a question mark. And then there are insufficient infrastructure there to support either students or to support teachers or educators. And there are huge concern and discussions in a lot of countries that the online delivery model actually didn't take into consideration or exclude some of the underprivileged students without access to devices and the connectivity. And then they're like lacking of like technical support. And also the most important thing is because now parents and like are at home together with the children. So how can they measure the effectiveness? How a lot of parents have like concerns over like, is this online learning at home, the homeschooling, really effective? What if my kids get back to school like after 2 months? Are they going to perform? So these are all the questions that people have. And along the way, we have seen different like offerings to help like solve like such pain points. So 3 major opportunities have been witnessed under both the B2B and B2C sectors relatively. So
Hi, Claudia.
for example,
sorry to interrupt. Because Eva has an earphone ready, I think the noise is cutting off a little bit. So she's coming to help you to replace the audio with the earphone.
Okay, cool.
All right, sorry about interrupting you.
No.
Hello?
Yeah, I can hear. It's clearer now.
Okay, great. Cool. So there are different opportunities that we have observed in the space. So for example, in the B2B space, we have seen like a lot of content provider and producers are emergent. So they provide different online tutoring courses relevant to school education. And also some of them are very, very special tailored courses to deal with like pandemic situation. And then some of the AI-driven software or value-added services platforms are also helping to solve like the live streaming like issues. So for example, like Zoom and also like Classing and a lot of other tools, they provide access to connect students and teachers. So like in video conference or for live streaming purposes, for chat tools, for file transfers. Some of the academics management tools helping teacher and students to do assessment, training, also very, very like became very, very like popular right now. Their integrated SaaS platform to streamline and help digitalize some of the administration functions for schools. So these are all the emerging trends in the B2B space. While in B2C space, this is like the offerings directly to help parents and students during past few months. So they're online training providers where they can provide after-school tuition, they can provide maybe different language training, they can provide STEM education for kids, they can provide vocational training courses for kids. So they reported thousands of like, I mean, at least a lot of players have been like for reported 5 or 10 times like students enrollment increase during like past few months. And then a lot of the traditional offline players are now upgrading themselves into hybrid or like online merge offline providers. In the very short time period, they're trying to record and even live stream some of their lessons in order to help students and parents, and they supplement online education tools like online open resources, communication tools there. So in the next few slides, we are going to share some of the examples. So all these companies has been like riding on the wave to achieve high operational growth in B2B segment. So in India, you have UFees Learning. So they provided technology-led learning solutions, and they're reported like the number of users for live streaming actually grew by 3 times. Their total daily viewing minutes actually reached 30 million minutes. And for Dingding in China, so DingTalk, it's a product of Alibaba, so that technology giants in China. So it provides not only a multi-terminal communication platform, but also it integrates a lot of like other functions into the platform as well. So I think it's this month, they have reported that their number of users reached 300 million, and among which number of students reached 130 million, which is a huge number. Remember, we said like in China, the grade 1 to 12 students base is 180 million. Literally, for every student who can have access to online classes, who have like a mobile phone, the penetration is almost like 100% there already. So they supported tons of teachers, tons of schools, and tons of students to ensure like the delivery is there. At least the students and teachers can have very, very close communication. And this tool is for free, literally free for everybody. And then for integrated SaaS platform, ClassPass is one good example as well. So they have covered 3.5 thousand centers in India and 70 cities there to help increase like the efficiency and the bridge. In the B2C space, the growths are more like explosive. For online training, for example, so Shares Online is one of the largest after-school tutoring, online tutoring provider in China. If we compare 2019 and 2020 February student data, their daily active user reported 800% plus year-on-year growth. And the new intakes of students year-on-year growth reached, 2,000%. And then OneSmart is another listed education company in US. They traditionally focus on the offline tutoring space. They have one-on-one class, they have like 1 to more like small mega classes as well. So during COVID-19, they have successfully transferred more than 100,000 offline students from almost like 500 centers across the nation to move online. And then it is now launching the hybrid product with both online and offline classes. And in terms of online, the delivery model includes both recorded classes and live streamed lessons as well to all the students. And Vital Study is a 3-in-1 technology platform in Vietnam, which combining identified social networks, training management systems, and e-commerce to help teachers. So its operational metrics are all are doing well as well. And then education, I mean, during COVID-19 has definitely raised attention from the internet giants in China. For example, the Tencent and Alibaba. They have all leveraged their unparalleled technology capabilities to enter thousands of schools and enter like millions of families to support digitalization initiatives. So as you can see from the left-hand side, they have like a lot of 2C solutions and 2B solutions by different like self-owned, self-developed products or like portfolios that they have acquired. I would say like at this stage, education to them is still something that they have passion for, and they're leveraging their advantage to enter the space. But the business model remains a question mark. And a lot of the products right now, not all of them, but many of them are free, are providing free access to parents. But once they penetrated into school districts, once they penetrated into like different families and students, what are the other products that they want to launch to make it as a profitable business model is still an open question. And we are also seeing like it helps a lot on solving like education equality problems, but whether they have long-term aspirations to be like a sizable player in the education space is something that we're going to see. So lastly is about like how to manage expectations of online classes. Yeah, right now it's widely available across the globe during the pandemic situations. But globally, we are carrying out the largest internet education experiment. But if there are like effective measures and experience that we can accumulate or can be incorporated into like future daily teaching work post-pandemic, it's probably the best learning that we can take from this this pandemic. So if we look at it from a school perspective or look at it from a teacher perspective, I think the most important thing, A, is trying to have good communication with parents, at least convey the message to the parents, like how the interruption gonna impact the student. Because it's not only China. I have talked to some of the education bureaus in other Asian countries. Some of them are reporting that they don't know, this is the first time that every country have faced this. They don't know whether if students are grounded at home for like 3 months, 6 months, are they going to ask the whole grade of batch of students to repeat a whole grade, or we just literally let them flow up, except for those final grade students. So these are like biggest concerns in front of the parents. A lot of parents are super worried. I think this is the first thing that we need to think about and let parents know. And then once this is solved, for daily like teaching work, I would say like if there are like opportunities, it would be great to deliver some of the training sessions to the teachers to let them know like what is the best way or what are the tips that they can learn to redesign or like to redesign their classes and also communicate with students more effectively to ensure they are not distracted. Some of the interesting tips that we have seen, not only in China, in different types of schools, is every class is shortened because traditionally the class is 40 minutes. For some of the schools, it might be like 90 minutes. Break it down into shorter pieces. And then you can redesign the whole class. It could be like 5 minutes of like recorded video or 10 minutes of recorded video, and then of lectures, and then another 5 minutes of like drills and quizzes, and then interactive games, and even like involve parents in the as a support during the course of the class is also a very helpful way. In some extreme cases, we have seen some of the schools may jam like 2 days curriculum into 1 day because there are a lot of working parents and it's just like who are like super busy. It's very difficult for them to devote like every working day to be there with their kids, and especially for those parents and families with like multiple kids. So they're trying to like using a very creative way to help parents who are juggling with work and supervision. The other thing is for teachers, we should always teach with parents in mind. So I know every school usually have like a set schedule during like the pandemic, but some of the schools will like be very, very clear with parents upfront. It's like we have a meeting with all the parents group. We set clear expectations. We provide a suggested schedule to parents and gather like the inputs and suggestions from them, and then finally align on finalize the schedule for different grade levels, and then share tips on how to create an environment where kids can actually concentrate in the class. And also, it's when kids are at school, I think the communication between parents and teachers sometimes are not that frequent, I would say. While during the homeschooling stage, parents actually has an urge to know more on like how their kids are performing in terms of like the whole batch of students and things. So do you leverage different tools and catch up very, very regularly with parents? So you can either like leverage some AI-driven learning apps to help like grading the homework and let parents know like how their kids are performing. And then by updating on the progress of study, as well as like providing kids with different platforms to demonstrate like what they have learned, either in front of like parents or in front of like the whole class, is one important way to keep parents like feel rest assured as well. While for parents, I think to create a learning friendly environment is very important. A lot of parents are already doing that. They set specific goals, they create homeschooling space, they define a flexible schedule. But one thing that I would love to highlight is like socialization is still critical. Do incorporate some of the social activities to keep away the isolated feelings. Not working with other parents, not working with other students. Even if you set up a support group or a parent group where you can share like knowledge or some of the useful learning content or learning apps, that is very helpful as well, because China has been like doing well in this space is because out of like school, they're very mature tutoring and tuition system where in the spare time of the students, parents can easily just like find different programs and enroll their kids in. So kids feel like their life is still like very busy. They can learn different things, not only from school, but also from other tuition centers. But when I talk to parents, some of our colleagues in other countries, they do feel like the school hours are shortened. Kids are at home and there's no further support. Some of the parents, they gather together on their own to form a study group and to provide additional classes post school hours to students, and they find like it is like a very, very useful to share like tools and then to form a kind of like support groups. So this is like some of the tips and things that we have observed might be helpful for parenting at home. Yep, so I'm gonna stop here. So this is like pretty much what we are going to share today. And we're happy to stop here and take any questions.
Okay, thank you, Claudia, for the wonderful presentation. So just
Thanks.
a reminder to all attendees, if you want to ask a question, you can click the Q&A button at the bottom panel of your screen. So over here, we have a number of questions. So the first question we have is, how does private or international schools compare with public schools when it comes to EdTech adoption?
Okay, cool. So let's go back to this slide. Yeah. So as far as we know, like the international schools, I think most premium schools and some of the international schools are actually newly established in China. So I would say like most of the schools came into being during past decade, while a lot of the public schools has been there forever, right? One of the advantage of public schools is they get subsidized by governments. So governments in China subsidize a lot of money for public school systems. So once there are opportunities to upgrade the basic OA system, to upgrade like student profiling system, they have dedicated fund to do that. So as long as the principal make the decision that this year we want to do so, then they have a lot of flexibility there. While for international and premium schools, it's all like investments from school only. So for the newer schools established recently, usually they, I would say like their EdTech system and adoption is better than the peer schools, because it's newer. Facility is better. Facility is one of the selling points. Smart campus is one of the selling points of a lot of schools. So I would say overall speaking, they're doing better. But it came to a problem during COVID-19 is, for example, for the normal public and private schools, a lot of the local supporting tools like AI grading, like live streaming classes, or like supporting content, they're in Mandarin. And international schools students and premium school students, because curriculum reason, because of different reason, they cannot source a lot of like abundant resources or contents domestically. So they have to like revert to like, I would say like a lot of like US and UK schools, their existing tools and things to help them. So I would say like this is a very different dynamics. I don't think a lot of premium schools in China now have an AI grading system that can help tailored, I would say like tailored to their curriculum. So parents literally have to do everything on their own.
All right, thanks, Claudia. So the other question is receiving a number of votes is, do you think Chinese parents will no longer want to send their children to US and UK universities? And if so, what impact will it have on the market for the sixth form programs offered by bilingual schools in China?
Yeah, this is a very good, this is a great question. So we were also discussing about like the trend of like students to go abroad. I talked to some of the players in the space. I would say in the long run, well-educated parents would still consider sending their kids abroad for undergraduates or for like sixth form college. But it's more about if you, for example, if destination countries are exerting stronger visa regime control over Chinese students, this is something that we can't control, right? So that means like there will be a shift among the most popular destination countries. We all know US, UK, Australia, and Canada has been the top 4 destination countries for students. US is more popular for undergrads, UK is more popular for K-12 students. But going forward, would Australia benefit from it or not? It's still an open question, but I would still say the passion is still there, sending kids abroad. But when we compare sixth form college versus domestic bilingual schools, the competition has been there for a long time. It's not only like post COVID-19. I would say in this way, for US, in US, it's not called sixth form college. So in US, it's like the domestic high school, and UK, it's sixth form college, or the UK high school boarding school. If there's still advantage for Chinese students to pursue the whole high school degree there, and you're considered as a local student over, instead of like an international students, then you still have a very, very strong competing edge there. But if this edge is gone in the future, and then it's a question, right? It's always about the placement. Parents send kids domestically if the local, they still look at the job placement result. If the local school job placement results is weaker than another sixth form college in UK, for example, then they may consider, especially for high school stage, they may consider to send kids there. But if in the next few years, the job placement result of local bilingual school is getting better and getting like more and more competitive, then some of the parents may consider like to keep their kids domestically. And then also one of the other things some of the private bilingual schools here is doing is trying to see like if going abroad is not the final destination. If the visa regime changes, if like the global relationship politics changes, they can still offer a gaokao pass for the students here. So literally, it's like the students, they have that capability to switch back to the local PRC track for by like study for additional like 1 more year or something. This is something that sixth form college probably can't offer. So that's my take on this.
Thanks. And there's another related question. So much of the opportunities have been taken by local providers, which I think is the EdTech aspect. So is there space for international providers?
Yeah, so in the EdTech space, what we have seen in the markets for some of the players is language is the first barrier. So a lot of things, if everything's in English or in a third language, your addressable market is just like such a small chunk of the market, because we have been looking at, we have 180 million grade 1 to 12 students, only 20 million in private sector, and only 2% of that 20 million are students in premium schools. Those are your addressable market if you can't solve language issue, right? So that's the first step that we need to consider. And then the second thing is you need to understand the pain points of the local schools and where the government budget or are going. Because if you cannot restrict your addressable market only to the premium schools, the larger market sits in public schools, right? What are the most pain points there? What are governments spending, subsidizing them? And then you can then form a BD team to actually knock on the doors of the schools and share your advantage. Because what we have seen is if the budget is right there, a lot of the learning management system tools and a lot of the EdTech tools globally are actually quite strong, or even better than some of the domestic offerings. So if you can solve the language issue, know where you should be focusing on the offering, and then when you're trying to talk to the principals, explain your rights to win, literally match it to the pain points of them. There's still opportunities there. But again, for a lot of international players, if you don't know the market really well, don't know the subsidizing system and some of the tricks to play in the space, it might be too difficult.
Right. Okay. Another question is by this guy is saying that I'm from a foreign B2B SaaS EduTech company, and we have successfully secured 70 schools to use our platform in China. That's predominantly from tier 1 or 2 cities. How can we expand faster into tier 2 and 3 city schools? And do you recommend establishing local partnerships to do so?
Yeah, it depending on your partners. So I'm not sure. I fully understand it's always easier to go to like tier 1, tier 2 cities, but I'm not sure whether this is a free product or schools are willing to pay for the money. So I would say tier 3 below cities in China, I think the mindset of the principals are not on par with those principles from like tier 1 cities. So for them, ultimately, it's always about student placement result, right? So whether the SaaS platform is helpful to help them to improve their student placement result, that's the ultimate thinking in their mind. If this is not helpful, they're not going to waste time into it. And if you're very, very determined to penetrate the lower tier cities, then the best way to do it is trying to identify the top key school. Usually it's a public school in those cities. Trying to talk to the principal or vice principal of that school who's responsible for the IT system. Convince them, even this is for a free trial, convince them to use your product and trying to like use this as a successful track record, and then knock on the door of others. But again, the investment of your time and the resources versus like the reward remains a question mark. That's my take. If there's way for you to further penetrate the tier 1, tier 2 cities, I mean, if the penetration right now is 2%, and it's easier to increase it from 2% to 10% than going to like the lower tier cities in China.
Okay, Thanks, Claudia. And the other one, how do you handle tests or exams in this online ecosystem where students are smart enough to know how to beat the system?
Sorry, would you paraphrase the question? So it's in the online learning environments, and if we have to conduct tests, how do students pick platforms?
Because I think students are smart enough to, like some students are smart enough to know how to beat the system. So I think in this regard, the person who asked the question is asking how do you handle tests or exams on the online platform?
Oh, okay. So I would put it this way. So maybe for younger grade levels, we're still doing it in a more manual way. So it's literally teachers will require parents sitting next to the students, and they say, oh, this is a semester test, and then the question is on the screen, and then students will have to like with parents supervision trying to answer them. So it's still a bit manual, but in the higher grade levels in China, before COVID-19, they are very mature test supporting platforms where everything could be done remotely. So and then it's just like schools and teachers will tell students and parents like how to access it, and then you just do it there. It's not students making the decision. I think the schools and teachers have a centralized platform already.
Okay, and another question, have we seen Chinese EdTech providers coming out to other markets, especially in Southeast Asia?
I think I would put it this way. So China market is like big enough for now. I think most of them are still focusing on domestic market. But for example, for Dingding, which because it's the portfolio of Alibaba, and Alibaba have like global footprint as well. So some of their users are actually not only from China, but from like other like regions as well, because and also this is a very standardized product, right? So this is like Zoom, this is like very, very universal. Tencent has similar products as well, so it's leveraged in other regions already. While the others, for Chinese EdTech players to go abroad, I think the first thing that they need to solve is also language, right? So you need to have a tailored solutions. You need to know the market more before you make the decision to move. And if we broaden the definition of ad tech, for example, I'm not sure if attendees here knows like VIP Kit. So for some of the online delivery providers, for example, English language training online providers like VIP Kit, I mean, since day one that they got like established, there are students from Vietnam, there are students from South Korea who are learning on their platforms because the demand for premium English education is always there, right? And this is an online platform that's going to benefit everybody from everywhere. And the teacher is in US. The communication language is English, right? So I've seen some of the cases there as well.
Okay. There are a number of questions on tech equity. So one question is on, are you aware of any policies by the Chinese government to improve tech equity among less premium schools?
Tech equity, can he or she clarify like what's the definition of like tech equity?
It might be sort of to increase access to EdTech among sort of schools that may not have as much funds.
Yeah, sure. So if we go back to this slide, so you can see China here. So definitely their policy there. So in China, since 2011, government has been like setting aside a lot of money and investing a lot of money into behind the education digitalization initiatives. So for schools in less developed regions, for public schools in remote areas, the Digital Education 1.0 plan is to equip and improve the infrastructure of those schools. At least in each school, there will be a dedicated laptop room. Or in some cases, every school should have Wi-Fi access. So this is universal, this is national initiatives. Definitely covers the type of schools that you've mentioned. And then now it has escalated to the second phase named like Digital Education 2.0. It's more about, it's not only infrastructure, it's the system. It's like, for example, digital textbooks and other things and services and other things. So there are different budgets subsidizing the school. The question lies in like what's for this specific attendee, what are you offering? Is it relevant, for example, for the screen in the classroom? Is it relevant to the Wi-Fi access or other infrastructure subsidized by the government? Because for smaller adoption items, it still goes back to the principal's decision on whether he wants to adopt it or not. Because in the past few years, what we have seen is there are a lot of money and investment into it. But some of the teachers, schools bought them or government subsidize them to get equipped, but the adoption by teachers and students, the frequency is not there. So if people buys it and is not using it, right? So this is not a good thing. So it's depending on the products, and then it will circle back to the question of who's the decision maker, where is the money coming from.
There's also a related policy question. So somebody is asking, as COVID-19 is disrupting the education field, how would you advise social enterprises to address this impact? And how should we grasp this opportunity to initiate or approach upskilling?
Yeah, so let's look at the slides. So frankly speaking, I do feel like when I talk to principals in China, I ask them under COVID-19, do you think you increase your budget on digitalization? Actually, for those premium schools who from day one has like very strong infrastructure set up there, they actually don't think they increase their spending. And from EdTech providers' perspective, they're all talking and sharing very similar message that everything that they offered during past few months to schools, to teachers and students are for free. They plan to charge them maybe from this month or next month, but they all know that because students are going back to school, the offline model, even they start charging, or even if they keep it as a free trial, no one gonna stay on their platform, right? No one's gonna use Zoom anymore if kids are going back to school. So the most important thing for you is trying to identify the pain points in the student's life journey. This is probably the easiest way to find a profit model. I think Alibaba, Tencent are all thinking about, okay, in the student life journey, from enrollment to teaching to assessment to retention, what are students doing every day? For example, every student in China right now have to do homework. Okay, AI grading might be a good way. It helps to solve teachers' burden. Otherwise, teachers have to spend 2 hours to do it. And then students have to do it every day. So it creates a high frequency scenario that you can think about, like what are the offerings that you can help. Or for example, after the COVID-19, students might get enrolled in more online after-school tuition programs. Would students require some of the hardware support or very light AI-driven teaching offerings in the future? So there are players there as well raising a lot of money, because this large online education experiment actually educated a lot of parents, and they got adapted to online learning of like English, of maths, of piano, of everything. And they see like opportunities there, and then they're trying to tailor or offer new products to kind of like increase the stickiness with the students. You need to think about this kind of scenario and then launch products accordingly. But the timing is just like so short. I guess the players who would be able to benefit from it, they probably from January has been thinking about the product, and they need to have a prototype or something ready now. Because that's the case in China, but globally, since schools are still closed, you still have time to think about those things. But those two angles are what we have seen like successful cases in China already.
Right. Just like you mentioned that the online learning might wane off as we come back to sort of face-to-face lessons.
Yep.
So I really want to ask, like in terms of your predictions of this exponential growth in edtech adoption, like how long will it sustain when face-to-face resumes? Like based on your ideas.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I don't have specific number on EdTech because this is more about like the tools and things school use or parents adopt or students adopt. But I have a number that I can share online learning. So before COVID-19, um, around 5% of Chinese students attend after school tuition classes online. 5%. I mean, in early January, it's still this number. And during February and March, this number is 60 to 70%. And now from May to May onwards, because kids goes back to schools, right? Our estimation is by end of 2021, this number gonna drop to 10% to 12%. So literally, kids are going back to school. And it's just about like shifting or moving some of the traditional offline parents who loves internet learning experience to online platforms. But again, most of students will go back to school. So for EdTech players, again, I would say you need the right product to keep the stickiness. Otherwise, it's just quite difficult. Though people are saying like this is the new normal, but you need like really, I mean, you need those principals who really have a very strong digital vision and also very like EdTech savvy kind of person who would increase their budget or investment. Otherwise, I think a lot of them will just go back to the old normal.
Okay, back to sort of tech equity. Somebody asked what kinds of programs or edtech will be appropriate or effective for children from low socioeconomic families who have little or no access to internet or electronic devices.
Yeah, it's quite difficult because we have seen in US. Yeah, this is a great question. I don't think a lot of the governments or EdTech players have a good solution so far because in some of the countries, if there are huge underprivileged students who don't have access to laptop or to online tools, then the whole state of students just like stay at home. No one has access. So there are extreme cases like that. While some of the practice we have seen is if this kind of family, they have a TV, and they might be like broadcasting some of the recorded classes there. And some of the districts or counties in some of the countries in Asia, they will set up a dedicated emergency fund to help like families and students to gain access in a certain period of time or things. But I would say like, I haven't seen like very creative ways for EdTech players to play there for now. And again, back to the business is what is the business model going forward, right? So by targeting this cohort of students.
Right, there's a question about market entry. What are the challenges for European edtech content and solution providers to enter the Chinese market? And what are the key things to consider when we enter the Chinese market?
Yeah, it depending on what specific EdTech solutions you are providing. I used to help a European learning management systems on their strategy to go to Asia. My feeling is let's do some like market research, trying to prioritize the regions, and even in China, you can prioritize regions or even states. with your price point, you need to think about your price points, right? So with your price point and with this premium, brand premium, what is like the school's annual procurement budget? And among all the school types, who might be the first the first adopters of your products? Talk to them to see like whether there's a huge enough addressable market for you. Do the exercise before you make huge investment, before you think about, okay, I can localize the language, I can translate everything. Do the maths and make the decision whether you want to take it from there. I do feel like the biggest obstacles here is in some cases, you need to get shortlisted into a provincial level or state level or district level provider list, right? In some areas, maybe foreign players is just like they would prefer local vendors, right? And then you need to think about like whether you need to set up a JV or something there. And then there are a lot of things in the gray area. So again, I would say like trying to understand the addressable market first before making the decision. There are other obstacles, but those can be workarounds. There can be workarounds there. But if you have a impression of like China is a huge market, we will definitely get a chunk of the market. That may not be right. I mean, the addressable markets after the calculation versus something in your mind might be like, there might be huge gaps there.
Right, I have two questions on tuition fees. Is there pressure from parents for refunds due to online learning, and how have schools in China reacted?
Yes, there are definitely a lot of complaints, but I would say like for more prestigious premium schools, international schools, they're able to maintain their price point, or they're giving like literally very small discount, 1,000 RMB or 2,000 RMB for the whole semester, which is like negligible, right? But I have seen one or two schools, more like mediocre performance schools, they are providing 15% to 20% discount for this semester's tuition. Yeah.
Okay. Another question is about Hong Kong. What market dynamic do you see in Hong Kong and the GBA? In the past, we saw thousands of mainland children going to international schools in Hong Kong. Currently, Hong Kong schools are losing students. So will Hong Kong continue to be an important market for international schools in the long term, or will it be superseded by the GBA?
I think Hong Kong is a complicated situation. Hong Kong market is losing students, I think not only because of COVID-19, but because of other reasons as well. I would say Shenzhen market and Guangzhou market and even Singapore market is benefiting from those students who left Hong Kong actually go back to mainland. They can go to like international or premium schools in Shenzhen or Guangzhou, or some of the parents, they just relocate to Singapore and then send their kids there. That's my take. I think Hong Kong market is still a great market, but if the political situation, unstableness, and things gonna carry on, it may not be an ideal option for a lot of Chinese parents. And whether Hong Kong domestic demands is sustainable in the future, I think that's something that we don't have an answer for now, but we need to consider. I would highly recommend if there are school operators considering entering Asia market. I would say in China, Shenzhen, that area is great. And then some of the surrounding in Shanghai, so surrounding Shanghai, there are Jiangsu province and Zhejiang province, which are relatively really wealthy provinces as well. There's selective cities there that has like huge demand for such schools as well. In Singapore, it all depends on like whether you can get the school license. If you are able to get a school license and have like a dedicated place for like 2,000 seats students, there's still like a lot of demand there.
All right, there's a question about curriculum. So as this person feels that there's very little of what is taught in schools has any relevance to the real world. So do you think we will see like a radical change in curriculum rather than the focus on standardized tests in math and science. Yeah, so move away from standardized tests and more towards learning.
I have heard like, I think it's just like during past few weeks, like SAT, I think it's SAT and ACT, some of the standardized tests are actually like canceled, or it's not canceled, it's like it's not a prerequisite for students to apply like universities abroad. I would say at least if it's in China market, if those passion for study abroad is still there, and international universities and schools are still thinking about getting Chinese students. I mean, this is not from a teaching perspective. This is more from a result-driven perspective. I do think there will still be like huge demand for standardized tests. And if you're asking about like curriculum in premium schools, again, there are schools offering UK curriculum, American curriculum, Canadian curriculum, Australian curriculum things. A lot of the premium schools, or not a lot of, some of the premium schools in high school stage, they cannot offer the students a high school degree. The only thing that students can get out of school is A-level license or a diploma, A-level diploma. So from school perspective, I would say like they would still, this test wouldn't be canceled, right? So, and parents are paying tons of money just for this one certificate. I'm not sure whether I want answer the question this way. Yeah, correctly. Yeah.
A related question is sort of how do you see the roles of teachers and teaching staff evolving when learning is shifted online?
Yeah. So teacher is. The question is when teachers when classes are moving online, a lot of teachers in the offline scenario, they only deliver the classes, and it's totally upon their own description on whether they want to maintain close or loose relationship with parents, whether they want to send message to every student, to every parent every day, or it's like just every month, right? By moving online, I do feel like the role and responsibility of teachers actually expands. You're not only under teacher-led model or student-led model, whatever delivery model in the classroom, you still have a very strong teaching role. And then a lot of the teachers reported that either it's the assistant teacher helping him or her to do a lot of communication work and to support them to do a lot of not a lot of, but some of the demonstration of like the teaching efficacy, just to make like parents comfortable. So this role is actually very, very important after things are moving online. And then it depends on whether the teacher, him or herself, is shouldering this role or someone else is playing this role. This is important to ensure the stickiness of students. If you do nothing there, I just feel like kids might got distracted, parents got like unsatisfied, and you don't know when school reopens, whether they will hang there or just like transfer to another school. I've seen some of the cases of like parents withdrawing their kids, especially for like younger kids, kindergarten, lower primary school grade. Parents just literally give up on the school system and give up on the teachers because they're unsatisfied. They just withdraw the students out.
Okay. All right, maybe we'll address one last question. So this guy asked, while older children face less challenges using EdTech for learning, how can we address the challenges that we face with young children, especially those who are very young, when we try to teach using technology? Is there any advice for us?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a great one. We have seen some of the very light models. So I would say like it doesn't fall under traditional school curriculum category, but some of the supplements content providers in China, what they have been doing is, you need something light. So in China, we have seen a lot of AI teacher-led product for kids between like 3 to 8 years old. For toddlers, let's forget about it. They shouldn't be like looking at the screen for a long time. But for 3 to 8 years old kids, it's only like 2,000 RMB for a year. And then you can choose to access that 30 minutes class every day or like every 2 days. So it consists of the syllabus and the content. For example, if it's English, then there will be 5 minutes of reading content, very vivid, very, very interactive. And then 5 minutes of like an AI teacher who would be there to like teach you the vocabulary and things. And then another 5 minutes of like quizzes, exercises. You need very strong animation and things to make this like really vivid. And for small kids, they can't even tell like someone behind it is a true teacher or an AI teacher. A lot of like because it only takes like 30 minutes of a kid's day, like it's not a long time, parents wouldn't worry too much. I've heard a lot of positive feedback from parents on like using those kind of tools. But again, you need to redesign the contents, and then it's not in a traditional way of teaching. It even doesn't require a true teacher behind the screen, right? It's an app on the phone, on the iPad, or on the screen that kids can access.
Okay, thank you, Claudia. As in, I noticed there's a number of questions. So if you'd like to reach out to Claudia or you have more questions to ask her, you can contact her by writing to Claudia Wang, claudia.wang@oliverwyman.com. All right, Claudia, is there anything that you want to say before we wrap up the presentation?
So I think the last thing that I want to, not to emphasize it, but it's just like more about Oliver Wyman. So we are a global consulting firm. So we help a lot of education operators and the governments and private equities on solving their issues in education space. I've been in the space for almost 10 years. And if you have any follow-up questions, like Celine has mentioned, feel free to drop me an email, or you can follow our company official WeChat accounts, and our marketing team can connect you to me as well. If there's anything that we could be of assistance to you guys, we're definitely more than happy to help. And the last thing is, EdTech is the future. I think everybody knows it. It's more about, a lot of concerns come up about like the profit business model, and also about like how soon it's gonna realize, be it like 5 years, 10 years, or even like 30 years. So it's unlike a lot of traditional 2C type of education offerings. You really need to combine, I would say, like combine a traditional 2B product with another idea to really offer some creative thinking behind it in order to find the right product to tailor to the China market. That's it.
Thank you, Claudia, and thank you everyone for sitting through the presentation. So kindly help us to fill up the post-webinar survey, which my colleague has sent over the chat, so that we can improve future webinars and, as well. Yeah. Thank you everyone. Take care.
Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thanks. Bye.